The hall was filled with laughter. Expensive suits, sparkling gowns, and glasses of champagne clinked under the golden lights of the grand fundraising gala. At the far corner, away from the proud crowd of billionaires and celebrities, stood a man in a simple worn-out blazer. His shoes weren't polished, his shirt was older than the event itself, and his presence felt like a mistake in the midst of all that wealth. His name was David Carter. A single dad. A war veteran. A man who had seen too much of life's cruelty and carried his pain like an invisible scar. The people laughed because he didn't fit in. "Who let him in here?" whispered one young executive, his voice dripping with mockery. "He looks like he came straight from a thrift shop," another added. "This isn't a charity for veterans, is it?" A woman chuckled behind her diamond necklace. David heard them all. He had grown used to the sound of ridicule, but tonight it cut deeper. Not because it was new, but because his 10-year-old daughter, Emily, stood by his side, holding his hand. She looked up at him with eyes full of innocence, unable to understand why people laughed at her father. And that hurt more than any wound he had ever endured in battle. The event was a corporate gala hosted by Olivia Bennett, a young, powerful CEO who had built an empire in tech. Known for her beauty, brilliance, and unshakable confidence, Olivia was admired by many, and feared by competitors. But even she had her own secret loneliness, hidden behind her flawless public image. Tonight, she was the star of the show, her voice echoing across the stage as she spoke about raising funds for education programs. When her eyes wandered across the crowd, they fell on David. Something about him stood out. Not his blazer, not his poverty, but his stillness. While everyone else drowned in arrogance, David carried himself with a quiet dignity, almost regal. But Olivia noticed something else, the way he held his daughter's hand, as if protecting the most precious treasure in the world. Halfway through the night, the hosts decided to entertain the guests with an archery challenge. A sleek bow was placed on stage, along with a golden target designed more for decoration than sport. The idea was simple. Whoever hits the target gets a special prize from the CEO herself. The wealthy men and women rushed to the stage, laughing, joking, and missing every single shot. Their arrows flew wild, some didn't even leave the bow. The audience cheered at their failures. It was never about hitting the target, but about showing off. Then someone from the crowd shouted, "Why don't we let the soldier try? Maybe he knows how to hold a bow." Laughter erupted. All eyes turned to David. His daughter squeezed his hand, whispering, "Daddy, don't. They're making fun of you." But David looked at her and smiled gently. "Sometimes, sweetheart, you don't show them your worth with words, you show them with action." He stepped forward. The laughter grew louder. Someone mocked, "Careful, he might hurt himself with the string." David ignored them. He picked up the bow, his hands steady, his breathing calm. Memories rushed back. The countless days on military training grounds, the long hours perfecting focus, precision, control. Archery wasn't just sport for him, it was survival. He lifted the bow. Silence slowly fell. Swish. The arrow flew. Straight into the bullseye. Gasps filled the room. But David didn't stop. He asked for another arrow. Then another. Each shot was flawless, faster, cleaner, sharper. The crowd, once mocking him, now stood frozen in disbelief. The man they laughed at was not just skilled, he was a master. Whispers spread like fire. "Who is he? He's incredible. I've never seen anyone shoot like that." And then someone recognized him. "That's David Carter, the veteran who won the National Archery Championship years ago." He disappeared after his wife's death. Shock silenced the hall. The man they mocked wasn't a failure. He was a champion, a soldier, a hero. And Olivia Bennett, the untouchable CEO, watched him with something new in her eyes. Respect, admiration, and something deeper she hadn't felt in years. But David didn't care about their admiration. He turned only to Emily, kneeling before her. "Did you see that, sweetheart?" he whispered. Her eyes sparkled. "Daddy, you were amazing." "That's all that matters," he said softly, kissing her forehead. The crowd applauded, but David remained humble. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here to give his daughter one good night. Yet, Olivia couldn't let him walk away. After the event, she approached him. "Mr. Carter," she said gently, "you left everyone speechless tonight. David shook his head. I wasn't trying to. I know, Olivia smiled. That's what makes it remarkable. For the first time in years, David felt seen, not as a broken veteran, not as a poor single dad, but as a man of worth. Over the weeks that followed, Olivia kept reaching out. She invited David to train her company's youth program in archery, then involved him in her foundation. Slowly, their worlds began to intertwine. But it wasn't easy. David carried the burden of his past, the pain of losing his wife, the struggle of raising a daughter alone. And Olivia, despite her success, wrestled with her fear of vulnerability, her loneliness hidden behind walls of power. They faced challenges, social judgment, personal insecurities, and the constant whispers of those who couldn't accept that a billionaire CEO was drawn to a struggling veteran. But what bound them together was stronger than society's laughter: Emily's innocent love for Olivia, Olivia's respect for David's integrity, and David's unwavering courage to live not for himself, but for those he loved. The love that grew between them wasn't instant passion, but a quiet fire. It was built on late-night conversations, shared dreams, and the realization that sometimes the most broken people carry the strongest hearts. By the time David once again stood in front of a crowd, it wasn't to prove his worth. It was at Olivia's side, as her partner, not just in business, not just in archery demonstrations, but in life. The man they laughed at became the man they admired. The single dad became a symbol of resilience. And the CEO who once thought she had everything discovered the one thing she had been missing: love. In the end, David taught everyone a lesson that night. You should never laugh at someone's scars, because they might be the very proof of battles you couldn't survive. And sometimes, the quietest man in the room carries the strongest bow, and the strongest heart. The night of the gala had ended, but its echoes lived on. For most people, the memory was of a shocking display, a forgotten veteran humbling the wealthy elite with arrows that never missed. But for David Carter, it was simply another day. Another night of enduring whispers, protecting his daughter, and surviving. He woke early the next morning, the same way he had for years. Habit, born from military life, never left him. While Emily slept curled up on the old couch of their modest apartment, David brewed coffee in a chipped mug and stared at the small window that showed a slice of the gray city skyline. The world saw him as a failure. Once decorated for his service, once a national archery champion, once a man with a wife and a promising future, now just a widower raising a little girl alone, living paycheck to paycheck. But when Emily stirred awake and came running to hug him, all the scars and ridicule melted away. She was his reason, his anchor, his everything. "Daddy," she said that morning, "you were a superhero last night." He chuckled. "Superheroes wear capes, sweetheart. I just held a bow." "But you beat them all," she insisted. "Even the rich ones." Her pride gave him strength, even as he remembered the laughter that had preceded his performance. The world had mocked him before admiring him, and David knew admiration never lasted long. People were fickle. But Emily's love, that was eternal. A knock at the door. Later that week, as David prepared Emily's lunch for school, there came a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, he froze. Standing in the dim hallway was Olivia Bennett, the CEO, the woman every magazine adored, the woman who had stared at him differently at the gala. David blinked in disbelief. "Miss Bennett," she smiled faintly. Even in a casual jacket and jeans, she carried herself with quiet authority. "May I come in?" David hesitated, embarrassed by the cracked paint of the door, the humble room behind him, the second-hand furniture, the little signs of poverty he had learned to hide. But Olivia's eyes were kind, not judgmental. He stepped aside. Emily's face lit up instantly. "You're the lady from the stage," she exclaimed, running to her. Olivia bent down with grace. "And you must be Emily. Your daddy spoke with his arrows that night, but I think you were the one who gave him strength." Emily giggled, hiding behind her father. David cleared his throat. "What brings you here?" Olivia turned serious. "I wanted to thank you properly. And, I wanted to ask you for help." The offer. Over coffee at his tiny kitchen table, Olivia explained. "My company runs an after-school program for underprivileged kids," she said. "We teach them skills, coding, art, sports, but archery has always been missing. When I saw you shoot that night, I realized, you could teach them something no textbook ever could: focus, discipline, patience. David frowned. I'm not a teacher. I'm just a father. Olivia interrupted softly. A veteran. A champion. That's more than enough. He looked at her, wary. Why me? You could hire anyone. Because I don't want anyone, Olivia replied firmly. I want someone who knows what it means to fight, to lose, and still stand tall. Those kids need more than archery, they need hope. Her words hit him like an arrow to the chest. He had spent years surviving, never imagining he could inspire anyone again. But fear lingered. What if he failed? What if the past he carried, his brokenness, made him unfit? Emily's voice broke his hesitation. Daddy, you should do it. You always tell me never to give up. Maybe you can tell them too. David's eyes softened. His daughter believed in him. That was enough. He nodded. All right, I'll try. A new beginning. The first day at the community center was nerve-wracking. A group of kids stood waiting, some eager, some skeptical, some angry at the world already, though they were barely teenagers. David walked in quietly, bow in hand, Emily skipping beside him. Olivia stood at the back, watching silently, giving him space. At first, the kids mocked. Archery? Seriously? Who cares about bows when we got video games? This dude looks like he came out of the army or something. David didn't respond. He set up the target, lifted his bow, and released an arrow straight into the bullseye. Then another. Then another. Perfect. Silence fell. Archery, he said calmly, isn't about strength. It's about control. You control your breath, your hands, your mind. You hit the target not with your arms, but with your focus. Something shifted in the room. Curiosity replaced boredom. Even the toughest kids leaned forward, intrigued. Over the weeks, David became more than a coach. He became a mentor. He told stories, not of glory, but of resilience. He taught them that discipline wasn't punishment, but freedom. That mistakes weren't failure, but lessons. And the kids listened. For the first time in years, David felt alive. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was giving. Olivia's eyes. Every day after practice, Olivia would find herself watching David. The way he guided the children with patience, the way he laughed softly at their mistakes, the way he carried his quiet dignity even in the most ordinary moments. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper. Something she had long buried beneath boardrooms and skyscrapers. One evening, as they walked out together, she asked, David, do you ever miss who you used to be? The champion, the decorated soldier, the man everyone respected. He paused. I miss my wife, he said quietly. I miss the life we dreamed of. But the rest? No. Respect is fickle. What matters is Emily. If she grows up knowing her father never quit, that's enough for me. Olivia's heart ached at his honesty. She had wealth, power, influence, but not the kind of love that made life worth living. Watching David with Emily, she realized she wanted that. She longed for it, though she feared admitting it. The challenge. But life never stays kind for long. One afternoon, as David walked Emily home from school, they passed a group of men outside a cafe. One of them, an arrogant executive who had mocked David at the gala, recognized him. Hey, look, it's the bow and arrow guy. The man sneered. What's next? Teaching kids how to hunt squirrels. The others laughed. Emily's hand tightened in fear. David calmly guided her past, refusing to respond. But the man called after him, loud enough for the street to hear. No wonder your wife left you, you were never good enough. The words cut deep. David froze, his fists trembling. His wife hadn't left him, she had died in a car accident. That wound was sacred. Emily tugged his sleeve, whispering, Daddy, don't. With every ounce of restraint, David walked away. But that night, alone, he broke down. The laughter, the cruelty, the endless judgment, it all came crashing back. He stared at his bow in the corner of the room. Once a symbol of pride, now a reminder of how far he had fallen. For the first time in years, he wondered if maybe the world was right about him. Olivia's choice. The next day, Olivia noticed something wrong. David was quiet, distracted during training. The kids sensed it too. After class, she confronted him. What happened? He shook his head. Nothing. David, she pressed gently, don't shut me out. His composure cracked. I'm tired, Olivia. Tired of being laughed at, tired of proving myself. Maybe I'm not the man you think I am. Olivia stepped closer, her voice firm. You're wrong. I've built a company, I've stood in boardrooms filled with predators, I've stared down men who wanted to see me fail, and yet I've never admired anyone the way I admire you. Do you know why? David looked at her, surprised. Because you don't fight for money, or status, or pride. You fight for your daughter. For her smile. For her future. That makes you greater than all of them combined. Her words struck him harder than any insult ever could. For the first time, David realized he wasn't alone. Someone saw him, not as a broken veteran, not as a poor father, but as a man of worth. And in that quiet, fragile moment, something changed. For David, it was the first flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could live again, not just for Emily, but for himself. For Olivia, it was the first surrender of her guarded heart. She wasn't just admiring him anymore, she was falling. The following weeks brought a quiet transformation to David's life. What had once been an endless cycle of survival, wake up, work odd jobs, cook for Emily, collapse into bed, was now colored with purpose. The archery classes gave him dignity again. Every arrow that struck the target wasn't just a shot, it was a message, you still matter. And Olivia's presence was constant. She attended nearly every session, sometimes silently observing, sometimes helping Emily with homework on the sidelines. David often wondered why a woman of her power spent so much time in a modest community center, surrounded by noisy kids and worn-out mats. But the answer was clear whenever her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary. A bond grows. One evening, after class, David found Emily and Olivia sitting together on the steps outside. Emily was chattering about her school project, a drawing of her family. See, Emily said proudly, showing her sketch. That's me, and that's Daddy. And, she hesitated. That's you. Olivia's eyes widened. Me. Emily nodded shyly. You're always with us now. It feels like family. David froze at the words, his heart tightening. He hadn't expected Emily to grow so attached. But Olivia's soft smile told him she didn't mind. Later, as they walked Olivia to her car, David whispered, you don't have to indulge her like that. I don't want her getting ideas. Olivia stopped, her gaze firm. David, she's not imagining it. Whether you realize it or not, we're building something. And I'm not running from it. His breath caught. He hadn't let anyone close since his wife's death. But Olivia wasn't pushing her way in, she was simply, there. Solid. Gentle. Real. Society's judgment. But not everyone approved. Word spread quickly in business circles. The tabloids sniffed out the story. Billionaire CEO spotted with unknown veteran, romance rumors spark. The headlines mocked him mercilessly. From beau to billionaire, Olivia's odd choice. Beauty and the beggar. When David saw the papers at a grocery store, humiliation burned inside him. Strangers glanced at him differently, some sneering, some pitying. Emily overheard cruel whispers at school from other kids, your dad is just a charity case. One evening, David confronted Olivia. This isn't right. They're dragging your name through the mud because of me. Olivia's expression hardened. Do you think I care about tabloids? I've been called ruthless, cold, unfit for business, none of it matters. It matters when it hurts Emily, David shot back. That silenced them both. Emily had started coming home quieter, her usual laughter dimmed. David couldn't stand the thought that his presence in Olivia's life was damaging his daughters. The rival. As if the gossip weren't enough, another storm brewed. Enter Richard Hale, a wealthy investor who had long pursued Olivia, both in business and personally. Handsome, arrogant, entitled, Richard saw Olivia not as a woman, but as a trophy. When he learned about David, his fury was masked with mockery. At a board meeting, he sneered, really, Olivia? A single dad veteran? That's your idea of a partner. He can barely afford rent, and you think he belongs in your world. Olivia's eyes turned icy. Careful, Richard. He smirked. I'll give him credit, he's a decent circus act with that bow. But a man like that can't stand beside you. Everyone knows it. David wasn't present to hear it, but the poison spread quickly through the corporate circles. Richard wasn't just an enemy, he was determined to ruin David, to prove that Olivia was lowering herself. Breaking point. The pressure built. Emily's struggles at school, whispers in public, and David's growing fear of being a burden weighed on him. One night, after putting Emily to bed, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his old military medals. They glittered faintly in the dim light, reminders of who he once was, and who he could never be again. Olivia arrived unexpectedly, holding takeout food. She found him there, silent, shoulders heavy. "David," she said softly, "talk to me." He looked up, eyes tired. "I don't belong in your world, Olivia. Every time we're seen together, it hurts Emily. She doesn't say it, but I see it. I can't let her suffer because of me." Her heart broke at his words. She wanted to fight, to tell him love wasn't about worlds, but about hearts. But David was stubborn, wounded, drowning in guilt. "Maybe," he whispered, "it's better if we stop." Olivia's chest tightened. She had faced hostile takeovers, lawsuits, betrayals, but nothing cut like this. She wanted to scream, to beg him to reconsider, but she saw the pain in his eyes. So, with trembling hands, she placed the food on the table, whispered, "For Emily," and left. Alone again. The days that followed were hollow. David went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, teaching archery, but his spirit dimmed. The kids noticed his smiles were forced. Emily noticed the silence at home. One night, she asked, "Daddy, did I do something wrong? Did Miss Olivia leave because of me?" The question shattered him. He hugged her tightly, choking back tears. "No, baby. She left because of me." But inside, he knew the truth. He had pushed Olivia away because he was afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid of losing her the way he lost his wife. The invitation. Weeks later, a letter arrived. It was an invitation to a prestigious corporate charity event, this time hosted by Richard Hale. The theme: Archery for the elite. David almost laughed at the irony. Richard had mocked him, yet now was using archery as a showpiece. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note, not from Richard, but from Olivia. "Please come. Not for me. For Emily. She needs to see her father stand tall again." David's hands trembled as he read it. He didn't want to face the laughter again. But Emily's hopeful eyes when she saw the invitation told him he couldn't refuse. The showdown. The event was grander than the last, spotlights, cameras, journalists swarming everywhere. David walked in wearing the same simple blazer, Emily clutching his hand. Whispers started instantly. "There he is again. The charity case. What's he doing here?" Richard Hale stood on stage, bow in hand, pretending at skill. He fired an arrow that barely scraped the target, yet the crowd applauded. He grinned smugly, then gestured toward David in the audience. "Ah, our local hero," Richard announced mockingly. "Care to show us your tricks again? Or are you afraid the spotlight might break you this time?" The crowd laughed. Cameras flashed. Emily hid behind her father's leg, trembling. David's heart pounded. He hated being their spectacle. But then Olivia appeared, stepping out from the side of the stage. Her eyes locked on his, not pleading, not commanding, but believing. And that was enough. He stepped forward. The archer rises. Taking the bow, David inhaled slowly. The room blurred into silence. All he heard was his own heartbeat, steady and strong. Swish. The arrow flew, straight into the bullseye. Gasps filled the hall. He fired again. Another bullseye. Then another. Then another. Faster. Sharper. Perfect. The crowd erupted, not with laughter this time, but thunderous applause. Even the cameras couldn't deny the truth. This was no charity case. This was a champion. Richard's face burned with humiliation. His arrogance crumbled in front of everyone. But David didn't look at him. He turned to Emily. She was beaming, clapping wildly, her pride shining brighter than any spotlight. And then he looked at Olivia. Her eyes glistened, her smile trembling, her heart unspoken but undeniable. A new resolve. That night, after the event ended, Olivia found David outside beneath the quiet stars. "You were incredible," she whispered. He shook his head. "No. I was just me. And that's exactly why she stopped herself, her chest rising with words she wasn't ready to say. David reached out, gently taking her hand. "I was wrong, Olivia. I thought walking away would protect Emily. But she doesn't need me to hide. She needs me to stand. And maybe I need you beside me to do that." Olivia's breath caught. In his eyes, she saw no fear this time, only resolve. And in that moment, the walls around her heart shattered completely. The night of the second gala had ended with cheers instead of laughter, but David Carter knew one truth: the world had not suddenly changed. Yes, people admired him for a moment, but admiration faded. Behind the applause still lurked envy, bitterness, and ridicule waiting for him to falter. And in one man's eyes, hatred burned like a wildfire: Richard Hales. Richard had built his life on arrogance, used to controlling boardrooms and people alike. To see David, a nobody, as he called him, steal not only the crowd's admiration but Olivia's heart was intolerable. That night, as the cameras focused on David's flawless shots, Richard clenched his fists and vowed, "I'll destroy him. And I'll make sure Olivia regrets ever choosing him." The calm before the storm. In the weeks that followed, David's life seemed almost too good to be true. Emily was thriving, her laughter returned, her confidence blooming. She told everyone her daddy was a hero, and David, though humble, could not deny the pride in her eyes. Olivia grew closer with each passing day. Sometimes she joined him and Emily for dinner in their small apartment, sitting cross-legged on the floor, laughing over burnt pancakes David tried to cook. Other times, she brought them into her world: quiet dinners in her penthouse, moments where Emily stared wide-eyed at the view, and David, though out of place, felt at home because Olivia was there beside him. Their bond deepened not in grand gestures but in simple things: sharing stories late at night, helping Emily with her homework, walking in the park with laughter chasing after them. But as their bond grew stronger, the shadows grew darker. Richard's move. One morning, David arrived at the community center to find Olivia already there, her face pale with anger. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. She handed him a newspaper. The headline screamed, "Veteran exposed. Is Olivia Bennett's new partner a liability?" The article was venomous, dredging up his past. It twisted his honorable discharge into rumors of misconduct, his financial struggles into accusations of irresponsibility. It even hinted that he was using Olivia for her wealth. David's jaw tightened. "Richard." Olivia nodded grimly. "He's behind this. He wants to ruin you, to ruin us." David's first instinct was to walk away. Maybe he's right. Maybe being with me will destroy everything you've built. But Olivia stepped forward, her voice fierce. "Don't you dare. Don't let him win. I've fought my entire life against men who thought they could define me. I won't let him define you." David looked into her determined eyes and realized something. Olivia wasn't just fighting for him, she was fighting with him. Trouble at school. The smear campaign reached further than David expected. Emily came home one afternoon, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy," she sobbed, "kids at school said you're a liar. They said you only care about money now." The words stabbed deeper than any battlefield wound. David knelt down, holding her trembling shoulders. "Emily, listen to me," he said gently. "People will say many things, but you know the truth. Do you trust me?" She sniffled. "With everything. That's all that matters," he whispered, kissing her forehead. But when she fell asleep that night, David sat in the dark, anger boiling inside him. Richard wasn't just attacking him, he was hurting his daughter. And that, David could not forgive. Olivia's confession. One evening, as the city lights twinkled outside Olivia's penthouse, she turned to David with trembling hands. "There's something I need to tell you," she said softly. David looked at her, sensing the weight in her voice. "What is it?" "I've spent so many years hiding behind power. I built walls so no one could hurt me. But with you, with Emily, the walls are gone. And it terrifies me." David's chest tightened. "Olivia." She placed her hand on his. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of losing you. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped just admiring you. I fell for you, David." The words hung in the air, fragile yet unshakable. David had not expected to hear them, not after all his doubts, his fears of not being enough. He swallowed hard, emotions flooding. "Olivia, I don't have riches. I don't have status. All I have is Emily, and a heart that's been broken too many times. But if you'll have me, every beat of it belongs to you." Tears glistened in her eyes as she whispered, "That's all I've ever wanted." In that moment, under the quiet hum of the city, two broken souls found wholeness in each other. Richard's revenge. But Richard Hale was far from finished. One stormy evening, as David locked up the community center, he found the storage room ransacked. Equipment smashed, bows snapped, arrows broken. The program he had built for the kids, destroyed. On the wall, scrawled in spray paint, were the words, "Stay in your place, soldier." David's fists clenched. He wanted to storm into Richard's office, to make him pay. But he knew that would only confirm the lies being spread, that he was violent, unstable. Instead, he stayed silent, quietly fixing what he could. But Olivia found out. And unlike David, she didn't believe in silence. At the next board meeting, she confronted Richard in front of the entire council. "You think breaking equipment will break a man?" She spat, her voice like steel. "David Carter has survived battlefields. He has endured loss you can't even comprehend. And you think a broken bow will scare him? You've already lost, Richard. Because the truth is stronger than your lies." Richard sneered, but the room was shifting. Respect for Olivia grew, while his influence waned. The accident. But Richard's obsession turned dangerous. One rainy night, as David and Emily drove home from practice, headlights suddenly blinded them. A black SUV swerved into their lane, forcing David to slam the brakes. The car skidded, crashing against the guardrail. Emily screamed. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. When the world stilled, David's arms were wrapped around Emily, shielding her. She was shaken but unharmed. He had taken the brunt of the impact, his shoulder bleeding, ribs aching. Through the shattered window, David saw the SUV speed off into the night. No plates, no trace. But in his gut, he knew. Richard. At the hospital, Olivia rushed in, panic in her eyes. She saw David bandaged, Emily curled against him, and her heart nearly broke. "David," she whispered, tears spilling, "I can't lose you." He forced a weak smile. "You won't. I promised Emily I'd never quit. And I don't break promises." The turning point. The accident changed everything. David realized he couldn't keep running from the fight. Richard wasn't going to stop, not until he destroyed everything David loved. And Olivia realized something too. Her world of wealth and influence was powerful, but without David, it was empty. She no longer cared about public opinion, about gossip or status. All she cared about was the man who had protected not just her, but Emily, with every ounce of his being. That night, as David held Emily's hand in the hospital bed, Olivia sat beside him. "David," she said firmly, "we're not hiding anymore. You, me, Emily. We're a family. And no one, not Richard, not the world, will take that from us." David looked at her, his eyes weary yet determined. For years, he had carried his battles alone. But now, he realized, he didn't have to. Together, they were stronger.